a bubble which eventually becomes unsustainable. And the misconception there is that the value of the collateral is independent of the willingness to lend. And that is false, because actually there is this two-way reflexive connection between the value of the collateral and the willingness to lend. Now, the present situation, which was touched off by the housing boom, the US housing boom, you had this very simple housing boom going on. But behind it, I contend, there was a much larger super bubble that has been developing ever since, I would say, 1980. And the underlying trend that actually was occurring in reality is an ever-increasing use of credit and leverage. And that actually has been going on longer. It really started ever since the Second World War. But it's in 1980 that a misconception about markets became the dominant creed, which I call market fundamentalism. The belief that markets can correct their excesses and that markets should be given a free rein. And that helped to accelerate this credit expansion, and initially was self-reinforcing. It manifested itself in globalization, the globalization of financial markets, which was actually very beneficial, particularly to the United States, but generally beneficial to the holders of financial assets, because it made it more difficult to regulate or tax financial assets, because they could move somewhere else. Secondly, you had deregulation, which then allowed financial innovation and engineering. And that was the third element, this explosion of financial engineering, which was, however, built on this false conception about markets that deviations are occur in a random fashion. And that's how you, and also the various risk management techniques that became very widely used were built on this false assumption. And now, this, because it's a false assumption, it led to crises, financial crises. And ever since 1980, in fact, we had a large number of financial crises in various segments of the world or segments of the market. But interestingly, of course, each time the authorities intervened and merged away the failing institution and provided fiscal and monetary stimulus whenever the crisis threatened to affect the real economy. So, interestingly, ironically, I would say, these occasional financial crises served as a successful test of the misconception that markets can be left to their own devices. So that's what allowed this bubble to develop as big as it did. Frankly, I thought it couldn't go this far. I thought that already in 97, 98, that the authorities might not be able to contain it, but they did. And then after that came the IT bubble and the lowering of interest rates, keeping interest rates too low, too long, which got the housing bubble going. So each time, the way to deal with overcoming the crisis was to accelerate the use of leverage and and credit. Until this time, it could not be contained. And it may not be fully realized, but actually the financial system did melt down. We had what Roubini calls a cardiac arrest. It didn't last very long because immediately it was resuscitated. But that came when Lehman was allowed to fail. And that brought one market after another to a complete standstill. A money market fund broke the buck. There was a run on money markets. The commercial paper market, where the money markets were the main customers, or a main customer, came to a standstill. And then you had the AIG thing. So within 3 days, the authorities had to reverse and actually throw moral hazard out of the window, because first thing is to keep the system going. That's the one thing we had learned in the 30s, that we must do whatever it takes to save the system. So actually, that was the turning point, because now we are willing to throw whatever money is necessary to keep the system going. The balance sheet of the Federal Reserve went from 800 billion to 1,800 trillion within 2 weeks. And we'll go to maybe 3 trillion if necessary. And of course, we had the TARP, the injection of 700 billion, and we have the guarantees of bank deposits in Europe, the guarantees that no major institution will be allowed to fail. Now, there is an unsolved problem. What is going to happen to the periphery countries of the global economic system? Because there the governments don't have credibility to provide this kind of guarantees, and therefore the repercussions in that part of the world could become even more severe than it's going to be here. So that something needs to be done there. But other than that, I think as far as the financial crisis is concerned, we have actually reached the culmination or the turning point. From now on, we'll be picking up the pieces and putting it together. And we are now going to see the impact on the real world, which is going to be very severe. So how to deal with that, we can discuss later.
Absolutely. George, thank you so much. And certainly we will be going into detail about all of that, but first of all, we want to bring up Nouriel Roubini, who will be, by the way, appearing before the Joint Economic Committee in Congress next Tuesday. Nouriel accurately forecast what was going to happen here back in the late 1990s. As I understand, he was looking into the collapses of economies in places like Brazil and Russia and all of that, and started looking toward where the next crisis was going to be. And like the detective who's trying to triangulate where the serial killer will strike next and finds that this guy is hiding in her basement, Nouriel found that the next target was going to be the United States. So he's here to talk more about that.
Thanks. Yes. There are several questions that are on everybody's mind, of course. This crisis was defined, I think, correctly as the worst financial crisis since the Great Depression. So the first question that George actually addressed very well is the question of the cause of this crisis. A related question is, are we at the bottom? Are the policy action being taken in the last few weeks necessary to avoid the systemic financial meltdown? And are we at the point in which financial markets are bottomed out, are going to recover from here, or is still the worst ahead of us? That's a central and key issue. The second question, of course, is that